A wealthy CEO decides to surprise his adopted daughter at school for lunch. But what he walks into leaves him absolutely floored. He expects a hug, maybe a smile. Instead, he freezes. His daughter stands completely alone while a pack of classmates tears her apart, mocking her lunch, her hair, even her last name. The worst part. A teacher is standing right there, watching, doing absolutely nothing. He sits down realizing this isn't a one-off bad day. It is a ritual, a daily nightmare she has been enduring in total silence. That night he digs deeper and finds something sickening. Buried reports, ignored pleas, and a school administration built on looking the other way. So he decides to return the next week. Not as a dad, but as the man who bankrolls half the district. The real question is, will burning the system down save his little girl or just paint a bigger target on her back? I would love to hear your take. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. And while you are at it, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the fallout. Golden hour sunlight hit the granite island as Caleb Thornton watched his daughter. She wasn't just eating. She was performing surgery on her cereal bowl. 8-year-old Imani was lining up her fruit like soldiers. Strawberries first, then blueberries. Smallest to largest perfect lines. Her tiny fingers moved with an intensity that scared him. A simple breakfast shouldn't look like a bomb disposal operation. "Everything good, kiddo?" Caleb asked, nursing his coffee. Imani just nodded. "Yes, Daddy." A whisper. She didn't even look up. Caleb stared at her over his mug. The light caught her braids. Tight, neat. She had already insisted on redoing them twice this morning. Her uniform was military-grade crisp, navy pleats razor sharp. Even her shoelaces were measured to the exact same length on both sides. This perfectionism wasn't exactly new, but today it made Caleb's gut twist. It took him back to the orphanage 2 years ago. She was quiet back then too. But when she looked at him, there used to be a spark. A little glint of hope. That spark was the reason he signed the papers. The reason he promised her and himself that she would never feel unsafe again. "Want me to pack extra snacks today?" He offered, reaching for the crackers she loved. "No, thank you," she said. Robotic. "I have enough." Caleb watched her wrap up half a slice of toast and bury it in the trash. She usually clears her plate. Alarm bells started ringing in his head. The car ride was dead silent, just the wipers slapping against the rain. In the rear view, Caleb saw her staring at nothing, hands locked in a vice grip on her lap. The closer they got to the school gates, the tighter her knuckles got. "Hey," he said softly, pulling into the drop-off lane. "You know I've got your back right no matter what." Imani met his gaze in the glass. "I know, Daddy." A fake smile. As she hopped out, she squared her shoulders. She looked like a tiny soldier marching into a losing battle. That image stuck with him. It nagged at him all the way to the office, haunting him through every conference call. He was physically in the boardroom, but mentally he was gone. Between quarterly projections and budget talks, his mind kept drifting back to Imani. Her robotic movements, her silence, the way she was trying to shrink herself out of existence. "Everything good, boss?" his assistant asked. He had completely spaced out on a question during the staff briefing. "Yeah, just working through some things," he lied, fixing his tie. He tried to focus on profit margins, but part of him was back in that courtroom on adoption day. He had sworn that being a father came first, before the money, before the legacy. He looked around at the empire he built from scratch. He had the power to fix almost anything in this city, but his gut told him this wasn't something he could fix by writing a check or making a call. That evening, the routine was standard. Dinner, homework, bath. But Caleb was watching like a hawk now. He saw Imani check her backpack 3 times. He saw her lay out tomorrow's uniform with obsessive care. She even asked for bed 15 minutes early. That never happens. After the story, Caleb kissed her forehead and headed for the door. His hand was on the switch when he heard it. A whisper. So faint he almost thought he imagined it. "Dear God," Imani's voice was shaking in the dark. "Please, Please help me be strong tomorrow." Caleb froze. His throat closed up. Hearing his little girl beg for strength just to get through a school day hit him like a physical blow. Something was rotten, and for all his millions he felt completely helpless. He didn't know how to stop it. He stood there in the doorway watching the lump under the butterfly blanket, listening until her breathing slowed down. The nightlight cast long shadows, but that prayer was looping in his head. It was going to be a long, sleepless night. Dawn broke gray and quiet. Caleb was in the kitchen on autopilot, the morning routine feeling more like a drill than a family breakfast. Scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, orange slices, plated exactly how she liked it. But the air in the kitchen was thick, heavy. The tension was making his neck muscles tight. Imani walked in, backpack already on, shoulders squared, uniform flawless. She had fussed over her collar until it was flat as a board. Braids pulled tight. Not a single hair out of place. "Morning, sweetie," Caleb said, sliding the plate over. "Put a little extra cinnamon on the toast for you." "Thank you," she whispered, climbing up. She moved carefully, deliberately, like she was trying to take up zero space in her own home. Caleb watched her push the eggs around her plate. She wasn't eating. She was stalling. On the wall, the clock ticked mercilessly, counting down the seconds to school. His mind flashed back to last night. Her whispered prayer in the dark. "You looking forward to anything today?" He forced a smile, keeping it light. Imani froze. "It's fine," she murmured. The same non-answer she always gave. Eyes down, shoulders hunched. The car ride was suffocatingly quiet. Nothing but the low hum of the morning radio to fill the void. Caleb checked the rearview mirror. Imani's hands were white-knuckled in her lap, staring blindly out the window. Drop-off was brutal. She gave him a hug. She gave too fast. Then she marched into the building like a soldier going to war. Back at the office, Caleb stared at the quarterly reports, but the numbers meant nothing. Asterisk ping. Asterisk. His email lit up. The weekly school newsletter. Building our community together. The cheerful font felt like a slap in the face. It was full of lies, bright photos of smiling kids, bullet points preaching inclusion and respect. "We create a safe haven where every child thrives," the principal's message claimed. Caleb clenched his jaw. He thought of Imani's tense shoulders. 3 o'clock couldn't come fast enough. He bailed on work early. The pickup line moved at a glacial pace. Finally, she appeared. She slid into the back seat. "Hello?" Quiet. Too quiet. Her face was a mask, but her eyes were screaming. Later at home, while she did homework, Caleb spotted her lunchbox by the sink. He popped the lid. Sandwich whole. Apple untouched. Exactly how he'd packed it. "Not hungry at lunch, sweetie." He tried to keep the worry out of his voice. Just wasn't hungry. She didn't look up. Her pencil scratched across the math sheet, writing numbers with robotic precision. That evening, bath time. The routine was sacred. Caleb grabbed the cup to rinse her hair. He poured the warm water. She flinched. Tiny movement, but he felt it. His hand froze in midair. It was a reflex, a survival instinct. "Water too hot?" he asked, knowing that wasn't it. "No, it's okay," she shot back. "Too fast." She went rigid as he finished rinsing, her little fingers digging into the porcelain tub. That night the house was silent, but Caleb's mind was a storm. He couldn't sleep. He replayed it all. Her careful speech, her precise movements, her stoicism. He used to think she was just shy. Gentle. Staring at the dark ceiling, the truth hit him like a freight train. This wasn't shyness. This wasn't her nature. This was armor. A shield she built brick by brick just to survive the day. His little girl was carrying a mountain on her back, and she was doing it alone. The realization crushed his chest. How long? How many mornings had she walked into that building, shoulders squared, hiding her pain? The thought of her bravery, her silent, lonely bravery, choked him up. He remembered the adoption, the promise he made. Safety, stability. He gave her a house food, a top-tier education. But lying there in the dark, he learned a hard lesson. The real battles aren't the ones you see. There fought in silence, in uneaten sandwiches, in prayers whispered when Daddy isn't listening. Midnight came and went. The moon haunted his wall. Somewhere down the hall, his daughter was fighting her demons. Tomorrow the sun would rise. The routine would reset. The lunchbox would be packed. But the blinders were off. He knew now. And come morning, everything was going to change. Morning light hit his desk. Caleb stared at his phone. Meeting. Conference call. Meeting. He hit cancel. Cancel, cancel. The intercom buzzed. His assistant sounded panicked. "Mr. Thornton, your schedule." Something came up. His voice was steel. "Family matter." The drive to Oak Ridge Elementary took 12 minutes flat. He knew the route by heart. He'd watched her walk through those red brick doors every single day. But today was different. He pulled his black sedan into the visitor lot, fixed his tie. It was battle armor now. The front office was a circus. Parents signing in, late kids picking up sick ones. Typical Tuesday chaos. Caleb walked up to the desk, put on his best poker face. "Lunch with my daughter today." The secretary didn't blink, slid a badge over. Parents visited all the time. That was exactly what he was counting on. He headed for the cafeteria. The roar of children grew louder. He checked his watch. 12:15. Lunch rush. He slipped through the double doors, blending into the wall by the art display. Then he spotted her. Imani, standing in line. Her purple backpack looked heavy on her slumped shoulders. She was gripping the tray like a lifeline, knuckles white against dark skin. Caleb's heart stopped. "Look who it is, the mute." The voice was sharp, cruel. A pack of kids near the front laughed. "Hey, Thornton, why are you so quiet? Cat got your tongue." Mani hunched her shoulders, refusing to bait them. She took a single calculated step forward in the line. "Check her tray. Probably something gross again," another kid shouted. The laughter rippled through the queue like a wave. Caleb's fists clenched at his sides. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to march over there and shut it down. But years of boardroom warfare had taught him patience, gather intel before striking. So he stood there, heart hammering, and watched. "Those braids are ugly, look like spider legs." A girl with blonde pigtails pointed a finger and snickered. And Thornton. What kind of weird last name is that for someone like her? By the register, Darlene Whitcomb dug through her purse, acting completely absorbed in the hunt for her wallet. She glanced up at the commotion, then looked right back down, lips tight. She was 5 feet away. She heard every syllable and chose stillness. Imani reached the front. Her tray shook in her small hands as she tried to keep it steady. A shoulder checked her from behind hard. It wasn't an accident. She stumbled. "Oops," a voice sneered, dripping with mock innocence. "Didn't see you there. You're so dark, you just disappear." Caleb watched his daughter, his fierce, gentle girl, regain her balance without making a sound. Her expression was a mask of stone, but he saw the tiny quiver in her chin, the same one she had last night during prayers. Mrs. Whitcomb finally looked up, sweeping the room with exhausted, indifferent eyes. "Madam." "Find your seats, people," she mumbled, turning back to buy her salad. The pack of kids scattered, giggling and shooting final glares at Imani. She stood there, tray heavy in her hands, facing a sea of tables. Spots filled up instantly, backs turned, gaps closed. It was a synchronized shutout. Caleb's chest felt tight, a mix of rage and grief. This wasn't a rough Tuesday. This wasn't kids being kids. This was organized exclusion happening under the nose of an adult paid to protect them. Finally, Imani drifted to a corner table, the reject spot cluttered with used napkins. She sat with the same meticulous care she showed at the dinner table, setting up her lunch with quiet dignity. Her gaze remained locked on her food, refusing to acknowledge the fingers pointing her way, or the whispers drifting from the popular tables. Mrs. Whitcomb walked by with her lunch heading for the faculty zone. She glanced at Imani sitting in isolation, paused for a heartbeat, and kept walking. Caleb stood frozen, his mind cycling through violent options. Storm grab her scream at the teacher, call every parent in the directory. But he knew impulsive anger wouldn't build a fortress for his daughter. She didn't need a savior. She needed a systemic overhaul. The cafeteria roared with the chaos of elementary school shouts, laughter, plastic banging on tables. Yet in that corner, his daughter existed in a vacuum of silence, taking tiny bites, her back straight against the weight of the world. She was 8 years old, carrying a burden that would crush a grown man. And she did it with a grace that made Caleb burst with pride and shatter with sorrow. He watched her methodically, finish the meal, noticing how she kept her elbows tucked in, occupying the smallest possible footprint. When she rose to trash her leftovers, she moved with that same eerie precision, the body language of someone trying to fade into the background. Caleb gripped the edge of the table near the entrance, knuckles white as bone. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he watched his girl stand alone, rigid with stress. Other kids swarmed the seats, but the air around Imani was a no-fly zone. The blonde girl wrinkled her nose dramatically. "You, what is that funk? Is that your lunch again?" "It's curry," a boy yelled. "My mom says it stinks up the whole class." Caleb saw Imani's fingers turn pale as she gripped the blue plastic tray. She didn't bite back, didn't look up, didn't breathe. She just stood there, enduring the abuse, learning that invisibility was safer than movement. Mrs. Whitcomb, supposedly on duty, glanced up from her smartphone. Her eyes glazed over the scene before dropping back to the screen, writing off the bullying as playground chatter. Caleb watched in disbelief as she stirred her coffee, more interested in her Facebook feed than the cruelty unfolding 6 feet away. "Hey, Thorny," a boy jeered, leaning into the nickname. "Why's your hair look like a bird's nest? Your dad too broke to buy a brush?" Caleb stopped breathing. He spent Sunday nights learning to braid her hair, a skill he mastered just for her. Now they were using his love as ammunition. He remembered her smile when he finally got the parting straight, how she hugged him and called it perfect. A clique of girls brushed past Imani, hip-checking her tray. Water sloshed out, soaking the sleeve of her pressed uniform. No apologies. No teacher intervention. Caleb realized with horror that this wasn't negligence. It was a choice. It wasn't random. The calculated bumping, the silence, it was a routine, a daily ritual. His daughter wasn't having a bad week. She was surviving a war zone every single day at noon. Caleb's leg twitched. The father in him roared to life. He was going to march in there, shield his baby, and demand answers from that useless chaperone. But just then, Imani looked up. Her eyes found his across the crowded room. The expression on her face froze him solid. Recognition, fear, and then something that ripped him apart. A silent plea. She gave her head a microscopic shake. Caleb knew that look. She was begging him, please don't make a scene, don't make it worse. His 8-year-old daughter was silently begging him to back off, to let her carry the weight alone. Caleb slumped in his chair, feeling like he'd just taken a physical blow to the gut. Every instinct he had screamed to intervene to stop his little girl from weathering this storm by herself. But he saw something in her eyes. It wasn't just fear, it was dignity. She was trying to prove her own strength. So he sat there. Every second felt like an eternity of torture. Finally, Imani found a lonely table in the corner and set her tray down like it was made of glass. She took tiny, measured bites. She kept her movements small, trying to take up as little space as possible. Laughter echoed off the walls, but she was trapped in her own silent bubble. The lunch bell buzzed, cutting through the noise. Caleb watched his daughter stand up robotically and walk her tray straight to the trash can. Most of her lunch went into the bin. It wasn't an accident, it was a ritual. How many meals had she skipped? How many times had she gone hungry just to survive this cafeteria war zone? Students rushed past him, totally oblivious. Caleb was frozen. The room cleared out, but he couldn't take his eyes off that empty corner table. The janitor started sweeping, giving him weird looks, but Caleb didn't even see him. Somehow his legs carried him to the parking lot. The bright sun felt like a mockery of the darkness inside him. He got behind the wheel but couldn't start the car. He just gripped the steering wheel until his hands hurt. All his success, His power, his influence, it meant nothing. It couldn't save his daughter from this silent suffering. Imani had learned to be invisible, to shrink, to endure. And he, her protector, had missed it completely. The truth hit him hard. His daughter didn't just know how to hide. She had turned disappearing into an art form. A survival strategy so perfect that even her own father hadn't noticed. She was vanishing right in front of his eyes. Caleb stared through the windshield. He didn't see the school. He saw all the quiet mornings, the deflected questions. It all made horrible sense. She was trying to protect him. She was carrying a burden no child should ever have to hold. His chest ached. He felt pride in her strength, but devastation that she needed it. The car sat motionless in the lot, a steel box holding a father's heartbreak. That's when he realized the truth. Real courage isn't about fighting back. It's about seeing. Truly seeing what your loved ones are going through. The afternoon shadows were long by the time Caleb finally started the engine. His hands were shaking. The image of Imani eating alone was burned into his mind. The drive home felt like it took forever. Every red light was just more time to replay the nightmare. Back home, he moved on autopilot, checking emails, reading papers, making dinner. The kitchen smelled like baked chicken, but his head was still in that cafeteria. When Imani walked in, she stuck to her routine. Homework first, setting the table, quiet, precise. They sat down to eat steam rising in the silence. Caleb watched her. She arranged her food carefully, taking small, calculated bites. The way she held her fork, so cautious, so deliberate, reminded him exactly of how she held that lunch tray. "Imani," he said softly, putting down his fork. "Can we talk about lunch?" She froze. Her dark eyes met his. She knew he had been there. Her shoulders tensed up, then dropped like she was finally releasing a heavy weight. "The other kids," she whispered, tracing patterns on the tablecloth. "They say my food is weird. Yesterday I brought jollof rice the way Miss Ada taught you. They said it smelled funny." Caleb's throat tightened. Miss Ada was their neighbor. She'd spent evenings teaching him those recipes, so Imani would know her heritage. Imani kept going, her words fragile. "They don't like my hair. They say it's too much, too different." She touched one of her braids, the beads clicking. "Jasmine said nobody would want to be friends with someone who looks like me." The matter-of-fact way she said it hit Caleb harder than any anger could. No outrage, no tears, just quiet acceptance. "How long has this been happening?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. "Since school started." She pushed a piece of chicken around. "But it's okay, Daddy. I pray about it." Caleb felt his heart crack. His daughter shouldn't have to pray for strength just to get through lunch. "You know none of that is true, right?" He reached over and covered her small hand with his. Imani nodded, eyes fixed on her plate. "I know, but..." She paused. "Sometimes knowing doesn't make it easier." They finished dinner talking about lighter things. Her math test, her book, the bird in the yard. But Caleb noticed she ate every bite as if making up for the lunch she missed. That night he watched her get ready for bed. She knelt down to pray, just like always. Tiny hands gripped tight, head bowed over the purple quilt. "Dear God." Her voice didn't shake. It cut right through the silence. "Thanks for Daddy, for the house, for Miss Ada next door." A long, shaky breath. "Please, make me brave tomorrow. Help me remember I'm strong inside, like Daddy says." A pause. "And please, make the other kids see. Different isn't bad." Caleb froze in the doorframe. Pride hit him first, then the gut punch. She wasn't asking for friends. She wasn't asking them to stop. She just wanted the guts to survive another day. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, walked out into the hall. He leaned against the closed door, listened to her breathe. On the wall, framed smiles stared back at him. Birthdays, holidays, happy times. In the dim light, the truth hit him hard. Watching wasn't enough. Not anymore. Her silence wasn't strength. It was a scream for help. She learned to shrink, to swallow the hurt, to pray for armor instead of peace. And he missed it. He thought she was adjusting. She was just surviving. The guilt was heavy, suffocating, witnessing her pain. That was over. Safety wasn't just a roof and a bed. It was dignity. She needed to know she deserved better than just enduring the abuse. Morning sun hit the asphalt. Caleb pulled up to the curb. Imani grabbed her bag. Slow, careful, too careful. His chest tightened. He knew what was waiting for her inside. "Have a good one, sweetie." She gave a fake smile. Dead eyes. "You too, Dad." She walked away. Her braid swung against her back. That was it. Caleb didn't drive to work. He parked the car, marched right up to the school doors. The receptionist flashed a plastic smile. "Good morning, can I help you?" "Caleb Thornton, Imani's father. I need her records, every incident report involving her class." The smile faltered. "Oh, well, we need authorization, notice." "I know the FERPA regulations," Caleb said, voice low, hard. "I'm her guardian. It's my legal right. I'll wait while you pull the files." 20 minutes later. Small room, stacks of manila folders. Caleb cracked his laptop, started typing. Hours ticked by. He read every line. His stomach churned. The reports were vague, useless. Lunch disagreement. Resolved by mediation. Cultural misunderstanding. The resolutions were worse. Students counseled. Monitored. No action required. Caleb built a spreadsheet, dates, names, results. A pattern jumped off the screen. Certain kids complained. Kids like Imani. The school brushed them off, every single time. Bullying got labeled misunderstanding. His phone buzzed. Work meetings. He texted his assistant, cancel everything. This was the job today. Afternoon came. Eyes burned. Resolve hardened. One report stopped him cold. 3 months ago, Imani told the teacher girls were touching her hair. Uninvited. The teacher's fix. Suggest student change hairstyle to avoid attention. Caleb stood up, walked out, needed air. He stood in the lot, fists clenched, deep breaths. He went back in. "Give me your anti-bullying policy and your diversity training manuals." The stack was thin, ancient. The bell rang. He packed his evidence, went home. House was quiet. Imani got off the bus, found him in the office, buried in paper. "Can I draw in here?" Small voice. "Course you can, baby." He made room on the desk, right next to him. She settled in, sketchbook open, pencils out, pencil scratching, keys clacking. He glanced over. A resilient kid, making herself invisible to survive. Outside, the light faded. Her drawing came to life. Bright colors, creative patterns. On his screen, a different picture formed. Dark, ugly. The spreadsheet wasn't data. It was a failure, a broken system crushing his daughter. Not an accident, not overworked staff. It was consistent, selective. "Imani." Soft tone. "Pizza for dinner." She looked up, nodded. "Extra cheese." "You bet." He tapped the order on his phone. The truth clicked into place. This wasn't just bad luck or missed cues. It was bias, rot in the foundation, deciding whose pain mattered and whose didn't. She shaded her drawing. Careful strokes. She deserved better. They all did. The papers on his desk weren't trash. They were ammo. Caleb opened a new file, started typing. War declared. "Official complaint. Request for immediate investigation." The words on the paper carried the weight of a sledgehammer. This wasn't a band-aid solution. It was a declaration of war. Because loving your kid means more than hugs and band-aids. It means burning the system down to build something safer. The Oakwood Elementary multi-purpose room hummed with low-level anxiety as parents shuffled in for the monthly PTA showdown. Caleb took a seat in the dead center. He wasn't there to be the VIP in the front row tonight. He was there to be invisible. He'd ditched the three-piece suit for a wrinkly button-down. The CEO was gone. Just an average dad remained. The air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and grocery store sugar cookies. Parents huddled in cliques, their whispers buzzing under the headache-inducing fluorescent lights. Caleb read the room like a boardroom. The fundraising moms owned one corner, the room parents another. Then there were the loners, the outcasts, like the woman he'd come to know as Tanya Reeves. Principal Matthews banged the imaginary gavel, her face plastered with a corporate smile. "Welcome, everyone. We have huge news about the Spring Carnival fundraiser." She beamed, projecting that fake high-octane enthusiasm usually reserved for fundraising emails. Caleb didn't buy a second of it. The meeting dragged through the boring stuff. Budget spreadsheets, calendar updates, volunteer sign-up sheets. Caleb ignored the data. He was watching the power plays. Who got the mic? Who got interrupted? Who got ignored? Then, during open floor, Tanya Reeves raised her hand. She sat with a straight spine, still wearing her office clothes. She looked tired, but ready for a fight. "I need to talk about the bullying during lunch," she said. Her voice was steady, but you could hear the steel underneath. "Multiple parents have flagged incidents and nothing is happening." Principal Matthews didn't drop the smile for a second. "Thanks for raising that, Mrs. Reeves. I assure you we take every report seriously. Our staff is trained for this." Tanya didn't back down. "Taking it seriously isn't the same as stopping it. My son is a target. The only feedback I get is that you've noted the situation." The principal's voice tightened. The mask slipped just a fraction. "We follow strict district protocols for every investigation. Maybe we can sidebar about your specific issue after we wrap up." Caleb watched the other parents shift. They knew the drill. He recognized the corporate dodge. Investigating meant stalling. Discussing later meant dismissing you once the witnesses were gone. "I've tried the private route," Tanya shot back. "This isn't just my son. There is a pattern of negligence here." Matthews cut her off with lethal politeness. "We love your passion for student safety. Now back to the carnival booths." Caleb watched the pivot. Tanya's crisis was wrapped in a compliment and tossed in the trash. He saw other parents, mostly black and brown faces, nodding discreetly at Tanya, but keeping their mouths shut. Fear kept them silent. The meeting rolled on, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Caleb drove home with a pit in his stomach. His brain was replaying the tape. The sun was setting, casting long, angry shadows across his driveway as he pulled in. It was a half-day. Mrs. Chen, their housekeeper, had already picked up Imani. He found them in the kitchen. Imani was perched at the counter while Mrs. Chen cleaned up lunch. "Dad," Imani's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Can we bake?" Mrs. Chen pointed to the pile of supplies. "Chocolate chips are ready to go." The hope in her voice nearly broke him. "You bet we can, kiddo. Best idea I've heard all day." Mrs. Chen gave him a knowing look and grabbed her purse. "Everything is on the counter. Have a blast." Alone with his daughter, Caleb fell into their old rhythm. He measured the flour. She cracked the eggs with the focus of a bomb squad technician. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and safety. "Remember when we did this every Friday?" Imani asked, attacking the dough with a wooden spoon. "I sure do," Caleb said, watching her. "We were quite the team." "Yeah," she smiled, a genuine one that reached her eyes. "I like baking with you. It feels like everything is okay." The words hit Caleb in the chest. He watched her scoop the dough, precise and careful. "You know the best part about baking?" he asked softly. "It takes time. You have to pay attention. You have to listen to know when it's ready." Imani nodded. She knew he wasn't talking about cookies anymore. "Sometimes things take longer than the recipe says," she whispered. "Exactly." He helped her slide the tray into the oven. "And that is perfectly okay." They killed the afternoon arguing about flavors, laughing about cooking shows, and debating if chocolate chips were superior to M&Miss. With every batch, the tension left Imani's shoulders. She laughed louder. She owned that kitchen. Later, sitting at the island with warm cookies and cold milk, Caleb studied his daughter. She was humming, swinging her legs. She finally looked like a kid again. The afternoon gave her the one thing the school refused to provide: a safe place to breathe. Crumbs fell on the counter as Imani broke a cookie in two. She handed him the big half. That small gesture of trust slammed into him. It was the total opposite of the PTA meeting. A mother screaming for help and getting silence. A child offering half her cookie even after the world taught her that sharing makes you vulnerable. The oven heat still hung heavy in the air, mixing with the thick, sweet scent of fresh-baked cookies. Afternoon light flooded the room, turning everything gold. Imani smiled, a real unburdened look that said more than 1,000 report cards ever could. Monday hit with a wash of sunshine through the kitchen windows. Caleb straightened his tie, eyes fixed on Imani at the breakfast table. No hunched shoulders today. No panic. "Ready to tackle the week?" he asked, pouring a second cup of coffee. Imani nodded, braids bouncing. "Packed extra carrots," she said, tapping her lunchbox. "Math homework is done too." Caleb had spent the weekend grinding. He drafted a massive mentorship proposal, real anti-bullying protocols, and cultural awareness workshops. He wrote the checks personally to make sure the school had the cash for training and supplies immediately. They pulled up to the curb. Principal Stevens stood at the gate, beaming as they walked up. "Mr. Thornton can't thank you enough," she said, hand out. "We're rolling everything out this week." Caleb gave her a firm handshake. "Happy to do it. Sometimes you just need someone to lead the charge." Inside, the icy stares from teachers had melted into warm smiles. Mrs. Whittam already had a buddy system running, so no kid sat alone. Lunchtime. Ruth Ann, a cafeteria aide with kind eyes, walked over to Imani's table. "Sweetie," she whispered. "Saved you a seat at table 4. Sarah and Marcus are over there. They're doing the science fair too." Imani glanced at Ruth Ann, then back at her dad, who'd stuck around for the launch. Caleb nodded. "Go on." Imani took a breath and walked over. Sarah, a redhead with glasses, scooted her tray over to make space. "Hey, Imani, you doing the plant experiment?" For the first time in forever, noise filled her lunch hour instead of dead silence. Ruth Ann stood guard nearby, shooting Caleb a wink. School let out, and Imani practically flew into the car. "Dad, Sarah wants to be partners for the fair. Can I?" Caleb choked up. "You bet you can." The next few days were a blur of small victories. Tuesday getting dressed took longer. Not from fear, from excitement. She had a crew to sit with now. "Sarah loves my braids," she said on the ride in. "She thinks the patterns are beautiful." The staff jumped on the new program. Caleb got daily reports on diversity workshops and student activities. Mrs. Whittam even launched a cultural exchange day for kids to share family traditions. Wednesday, Ruth Ann split up the kids who used to tease Imani. She watched them like a hawk, but with a gentle touch. "Your daddy did a great thing," Ruth Ann whispered, helping Imani wipe up some spilled milk. "Sometimes folks just need help seeing the truth." That night, Caleb and Imani sat over empty plates of stir-fry. Imani rambled about her project Hands Flying, as she described growing beans in different soils. "Sarah's mom said we can do the experiment at her house too," she beamed. "That's amazing, honey," Caleb said, heart swelling. "Oh, and guess what? Marcus brings curry too. Just like me. He wants to trade lunches tomorrow." Caleb laughed out loud. It wasn't just the story, it was the relief of seeing his daughter finally exhale. Their laughter bounced off the walls, warm and safe. Ruth Ann's words came back to him. Sometimes it just takes one person. But watching Imani glow, he knew it took a village. Willing teachers, kind kids, a sharp-eyed lunch lady. And mostly Imani's guts to keep showing up. "Dad," Imani broke his trance. "Can we bake cookies for the class next week? Mrs. Whittam said we can bring treats for exchange day." Caleb grabbed her hand across the table. "Absolutely. We'll use Grandma Rose's recipe." They started plotting their baking strategy, giggling the whole time. The room felt right. That specific joy of being seen, really seen by the people around you. They left the dishes and moved to the couch. Imani sketched out cookie plans, while Caleb sat back silently, thanking God for her happiness. Thursday started strong. Sunlight striped the counters while Caleb packed her favorite jollof rice and plantains. She'd been different lately. Shoulders down, voice light. The old Imani was back. But when he picked her up that afternoon, the vibe shattered. She climbed in slowly, hugging her backpack like armor. The light in her eyes was gone. "How was it, sweetie?" Caleb asked, checking the rear view. Imani smoothed her skirt, a nervous tick he knew too well. "Mrs. Whittam said I need to stop being so sensitive." Caleb's knuckles turned white on the leather wheel. "What went down today?" "Reading circle." They were making fun of my braids again. Imani's voice was barely a whisper. I raised my hand, Daddy, just like the rules say. But Miss Whitcomb, she told me to grow up and ignore it. The interior of the car suddenly felt like an oven. Caleb cranked the AC, needing a beat to keep his temper in check. That it. She kept me back after the bell. Said I need to try harder to act like everyone else. Imani's finger traced the cartoon cat on her lunchbox. Full lunchbox? Again? Back at the house, Caleb's pocket buzzed. Email? It was from Darlene Whitcomb. His jaw locked tight as he scanned the screen. Mr. Thornton just touching base on Imani's social friction. She participates, sure, but she's showing a pattern of being overly sensitive to normal peer stuff. We need to talk about fixing her attitude so she integrates better. Best Darlene. Caleb read it 3 times. Each word felt like a slap in the face. The gaslighting. The professional way she blamed an 8-year-old for her own abuse. Masterful. He booked a slot with Principal Lockridge immediately, 4:30. The school was a ghost town. Caleb's dress shoes clicked loud against the wax floors as he marched toward the administration wing. Gerald P. Lockridge's office screamed authority. Framed degrees everywhere, a massive mahogany desk and guest chairs set low, so you had to look up at him. Mr. Thornton. Lockridge stood up. Fake smile, dead eyes. I hear you're upset. I get it. Caleb didn't sit until the guy pointed. I'm not just upset, I'm furious. You're handling bullying by calling my daughter the problem. Lockridge put on his concerned face. Bullying. That's a heavy accusation. We see it as growing pains. Kids this age, they tease about food looks. It's how they learn social hierarchy. Caleb kept his voice deadly calm. By mocking her, Lockridge leaned in, clasping his hands. We've done plenty for her already. The seating charts, the programs from the funding you donated. But we can't coddle her. It creates a fragile environment. There was that word again. There was that, echoing the teacher. Fragile, she's being hunted. That's not fragile. You're taking this very personally. The tone shifted. A warning shot. We pride ourselves on keeping the peace here, Mr. Thornton. Sometimes parents get involved and make a mess of things that would naturally fix themselves. A polite threat. Back off or it gets worse. Caleb felt the weight of the institution crushing down on him. Thanks for your time. He stood up. But get this straight. Telling an 8-year-old to eat trash isn't keeping the peace. It's silencing the victim. The smile vanished. We all want what's best here. Think carefully about your next move. Leave the education to the educators. Walking to the car, it hit him. The fancy office, the big words, the subtle threats. This wasn't about safety. The whole system wasn't built to protect kids. It was built to protect the school's reputation. He sat behind the wheel, picturing Imani. Her quiet prayers, her gentle nature. They hadn't broken her spirit yet. It wasn't just the bullies on the playground. It was the adults, the emails, the meetings, the power plays. The system wasn't broken. It was working perfectly. Keep it quiet, crush the complainer, protect the status quo. As the sun dipped below the asphalt, Caleb realized the truth. This wasn't just about Imani anymore. It was about every kid forced to hide their pain so adults didn't have to do their jobs. Every parent told to sit down and shut up. The realization felt heavy in his chest. Imani was at home right now, probably drawing, still trusting the world was good. The steering wheel froze his hands. The real enemy wasn't the mean kids. It was the polite silence that let them get away with it. A quiet Friday evening vibe filled Caleb's home office. He sat there, phone pressed to his ear. Sunset gold washed over the floorboards. Marcus was on the line. Old friend, school board guy. Riverside Academy has a spot open. They actually walk the walk on diversity, Caleb, not just brochures. I can pull a string. Caleb rubbed his temples, exhausted. How do they handle bullies? Zero tolerance. Real expulsion, not just talks. Support staff is elite. Look, I know you want to fight this war, but sometimes you just gotta get your kid to safety. They didn't know someone was listening. Imani stood in the hall, socks silent on the wood. Water glass in hand, gripping the doorframe, heart pounding. Maybe, Caleb sighed. I hate running away. But Imani, her safety comes first. A strangled noise behind him made Caleb spin around. Imani was framed in the doorway, eyes swimming in tears. The bright pink of her pajamas just made her look even more broken. Imani, honey. Caleb jammed his thumb on the end call button. Please don't make me go, she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Then the floodgates just opened. I don't want to go to another new school. I don't want to start over again. I can't. I just can't. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Caleb cleared the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees. Hey, look at me. It's okay. Nothing is set in stone. I was just talking options. But you want me gone? Her intensity caught him off guard. Every time things get bad, people just want to send me away. That hit him right in the gut. He flashed back to her case file, that long list of foster homes before he came along. Every transfer stamped for the best. Every single time she was the one forced to adapt, to reinvent herself, to prove she was worth keeping around. Imani hugged herself tight, a self-soothing habit she couldn't shake. I pray every night, Daddy. Not just to be brave. She took a jagged breath. I pray someone actually sees what's going on. Like really sees it, instead of just fixing it by making me disappear. Caleb felt a lump form in his throat. Come here, he breathed, opening his arms. She froze for a second, then collapsed into him, burying her face in his shirt. I don't need saving, she mumbled. Her voice was thick with tears against his shoulder. I want things to actually change, not just for me. For Jasmine and Marcus and all the kids they treat like dirt. He smoothed down her hair, careful with the braids he had spent months learning to plait perfectly. Baby, watching you hurt like this. She pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. That gaze was way too old for an 8-year-old. Sometimes the hurt means things need to change, Daddy. It doesn't mean we need to run away. The sheer truth of it stopped him dead. Here he was, titan of industry Mr. Fix-It, with his checkbook getting a masterclass in courage from a 3rd grader. When did you get so smart? He whispered. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I think God gives us the words when we really need them. Caleb stood up, scooping her into his arms. Let's get you back to bed. It's late. The house was silent around them, save for the furnace humming in the basement. Back in her room, bathed in the glow of those purple walls and fairy lights they picked out. Imani crawled under the covers. Caleb tucked her in tight and knelt by the mattress. Imani, he said, his voice steady, I need you to know something. When I adopted you, I swore I'd keep you safe. Sometimes I get scared I'm failing at that. She reached out her small hand, cupping his cheek. It was so gentle it actually hurt his heart. You protect me just by being here, Daddy, by listening, by believing me. I do believe you, he said, and he meant it. And here is my promise. We aren't running anywhere. We are going to stand our ground, even when it sucks, even when walking away is easier. He squeezed her hand. We're going to fix this. For everyone. It might take a while and it's going to be tough, but we're a team. Imani's eyes welled up again, but these weren't sad tears anymore. You promise? I promise. He gave her hand a squeeze. And guess what? God heard you. You are seen, kiddo. By me and by him. He gave you a warrior's heart. You want to help others, not just save yourself. That got a real smile out of her, the kind that lit up the room. Can we pray? You bet. They bowed their heads, her soft voice cutting through the silence. Dear God, thank you for my daddy who actually listens. Thank you for making me brave enough to speak up. Please help us fix the school for me and all the other kids. And please help Daddy be brave too, amen? Amen, Caleb whispered, feeling his chest swell. He stayed there on his knees long after she drifted off, just watching the rhythm of her breathing. In the dim light, he made a silent vow, not just to stand by her, but to learn from her. Her courage wasn't about fighting or running. It was about staying put and demanding better. True strength looked like an 8-year-old girl praying for justice instead of an escape route. Monday morning hit with a sharp autumn chill. Caleb sat at the kitchen island laptop open, watching Imani meticulously spread peanut butter on her toast. His finger hovered over the trackpad as he read the email draft one last time. Subject line: Immediate request for District Forum School Climate and Student Dignity. His heart was hammering against his ribs. This wasn't his usual polite donor check-in. This was raw, it was aggressive, it was necessary. Imani looked up from her plate. "Dad, you okay?" Caleb forced a smile. "Just thinking, honey." He hit send before his nerves could talk him out of it. Within 60 minutes, his phone blew up. First text was from Sarah Chen, his PR director. "We need to talk, now." By 10 o'clock, he'd cleared the deck for an emergency war room meeting. 5 of his top advisors sat around the mahogany table, looking grim. "Caleb," Sarah started losing her usual cool. "I get where your heart is, but this forum, it's radioactive. Extremely high risk." Marcus Thompson, his general counsel, agreed. "The school board is going to interpret this as a hostile act. Given your status as a primary donor..." "I'm not calling this meeting as a donor." Caleb cut him off, his voice low but dangerous. "I'm calling it as a father and a taxpayer. That is exactly the problem," sighed James Rivera, head of community relations. "You are a heavy hitter in this city. Every move you make shakes the ground. The district is going to see this as you trying to strong-arm them." Caleb stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the skyline below. "Enough with the optics. Let's look at the ugly truth." Sarah pushed back immediately. "The timing is terrible. With the initiative launching next quarter, there's always a reason to stall." Caleb spun around to face the room. "There's always something in the pipeline. Always some delicate ego to protect. Meanwhile, kids are breaking. My daughter is breaking, and she is not the only one." The room went dead silent. Caleb felt the heavy shift in the air. He could practically smell their panic, their instinct to spin, manage, and control the damage. But his mind went to Imani, her quiet prayers, her brave, fake smiles. "I already sent the invites," he said, voice low. "Every board member, principal, and parent president has one. The press release hit the wire this afternoon." Sarah slumped in her chair, defeated. "At least let us spin the message." Caleb shook his head. "The message is simple. We are done lying about what is happening in these schools." The backlash started before lunch. Responses trickled in, some supportive, most cautious, a few straight-up hostile. Principal Locke didn't mince words. "While we value your passion, we are concerned this forum will be disruptive." Corporate speak for "shut it down." By 5 o'clock, the local news was running the story. Caleb's phone blew up with texts from parents, teachers, and community leaders. Some called him a hero. Others warned him he was painting a target on his back. The drive home felt like it took a lifetime. He walked in to find Imani at the dining table, buried in homework. She looked up, eyes too old and too wise for an 8-year-old. "How was your day?" she asked, repeating his daily ritual. Caleb pulled up a chair. "Different. Honestly, a little scary." Imani set down her pencil. "Because of the big meeting, I heard Mrs. Wickham talking about it." Caleb stiffened. "What did she say?" Imani shrugged shoulders tight. "She said some people need to learn to leave well enough alone." That familiar protective rage flared in his chest. He kept his voice steady. "And what do you think about that?" She paused, tracing the edge of her worksheet. "Is telling the truth always this scary?" The question hit him like a gut punch. He thought about the cowardly emails, the diplomatic threats, the adults more worried about their careers than a child's safety. Then he thought about his daughter eating lunch alone. "Yes," he said. "Sometimes the truth is terrifying, especially when it forces people to look at things they want to ignore." Imani frowned. "So when do you do it?" Caleb covered her hand with his. "Courage isn't about being fearless, sweetheart. It's about doing the right thing even when your knees are shaking." Imani nodded slowly. "Like Daniel in the lion's den." Caleb smiled. "Exactly like that." He gave her hand a squeeze. "Sometimes the hardest part isn't fighting the lions. It's just opening the door to the den." That night while Imani slept, Caleb sat at his desk locking down the details. Venue secured. The library community room, neutral territory. Date set for 2 weeks out. Enough time to prepare, not enough time for them to find an excuse to cancel. He started firing off the formal invites, personal ones, to Principal Locke, to Mrs. Wickham, to Ruth Ann, the lunch lady who actually cared, to every parent who had been politely ignored, to every teacher terrified to speak up. With every click of send, the pressure in the room spiked. This wasn't just about Imani anymore. It wasn't just about this school. It was about shattering the silence that protected the powerful and crushed the weak. He saved the last invite for Tanya Reeves, the mom they silenced at the last meeting. Her reply came back instantly. "About time. I'm in." Caleb closed his laptop and crept into Imani's room. She was out cold, stuffed giraffe tucked under her arm. He thought about the guts it took for her to speak up, to break the wall of silence she had built for survival. "You are way braver than me," he whispered, pulling the door shut. Chapter 12. The Forum. Tuesday night. The school auditorium filled up slowly. You could cut the tension with a knife. Folding chairs groaned under the weight of parents and nervous administrators. The room felt massive and suffocating all at once. Caleb took the front row, gripping Imani's hand like a lifeline. She was in her favorite yellow dress braids, clicking softly with yellow beads every time she moved. Her other hand clutched a sticker-covered notebook. "You good?" Caleb whispered. Imani nodded, but her grip tightened. On stage, Principal Locke adjusted the mic, his trademark smile looking brittle. The school board lined up behind him like a wall of suits, faces blank. They opened with the usual boring procedures, but the politeness felt thin. The air was electric. When they finally opened the floor for comments, the silence was heavy. Then Tanya Reeves stood up. The same mother they brushed off last time. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. "My son Marcus came home crying 3 times last week. He begged me to stay quiet. He said saying something makes it worse. What are we teaching them when silence feels safer than the truth?" A murmur ripped through the crowd. Another parent stood, then another. The dam broke. A father talked about birthday exclusions. A mother screamed about how her son's bullying report was dismissed as overreacting. "Row 3, Mrs. Chen. Usually you never hear a peep from her." Tonight she stood up and told the room exactly why her twins came home crying about their lunch. The teacher told them to pack American food if they wanted to fit in. Her voice cracked heavy with pain. They are American, born and raised. One story triggered another. A pattern too ugly to ignore. Some parents wept openly. Others were shaking, barely keeping a lid on their rage. Different families, same cold truth. Their kids weren't being protected. They were being trained to survive. Caleb felt Imani's small hand tighten around his fingers. Then Darlene Whittam walked to the mic. She looked pale, like she was going to be sick. She gripped her notepad until her knuckles turned white. The room went dead silent. She choked, had to clear her throat. "I have to say this." She looked right at the principal, then dropped her eyes to Caleb. "I failed your daughter. I failed every single one of these kids." Tears tracked through her makeup. "I saw it. I saw everything. Every single day. And I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I told myself speaking up would just make a mess. I thought keeping the peace mattered more than..." Her voice broke. "I was wrong. God, I was so wrong." The admission hit the room like a physical blow. Principal Lockridge squirmed in his chair. Darlene wasn't done. "We preach inclusion in the newsletter. We tape kindness posters to the walls. But when it counted, when it was time to actually stand up," she wiped her face. "I chose my comfort. I let them lose their dignity so I could have an easy day. And that is on me. Forever." A tissue box made the rounds. Even the stone-faced board members were dabbing their eyes. The lie that everything is fine shattered right there. The floodgates opened. Other teachers stood up. Mrs. Rodriguez from 2nd grade admitted she'd seen it too. Mr. Thompson from the cafeteria explained how the seating chart was basically a map of the bullying hierarchy. One confession triggered the next. Truth is contagious like that. Beside him, Caleb felt Imani straighten her spine. She didn't look triumphant. She just looked light, like a 1,000-pound weight was finally off her back. Her shoulders dropped for the first time in weeks. The board president tried to kill the momentum with corporate speak about reviews and committees. The room wasn't having it. One person stood, then 10, then the whole auditorium. No shouting, just standing. A silent witness to the truth. Imani stood up too small, but unbreakable. Caleb rose with her, not letting go of her hand. Across the aisle, Darlene Whittam dried her face and stood tall, finally picking courage over comfort. You couldn't deny it anymore. The air in the room shifted. Policy is just paper. This was a change of heart. Caleb squeezed Imani's hand. Sometimes bravery isn't a fight. It's just refusing to let the truth stay buried. Nobody said a word. Nobody had to. They just stood. Hundreds of people united in the reckoning. This was the start of something real. Next morning, the sun hit Imberfield Elementary. Long shadows in the empty halls waiting for the kids. But the vibe had flipped. The air felt scrubbed clean. That toxic silence gone. Caleb sat at his desk watching the inbox explode. Coffee turned ice cold while he read message after message. Horror stories from parents, tips from scared teachers, support from total strangers. His phone buzzed. Breaking News District launches full discrimination probe. He rubbed his eyes, flashing back to last night. The way those parents started quiet and ended up roaring. Maria Gutierrez talking about her son getting mocked for speaking Spanish. James Chen listing the slurs his daughters had to swallow. Ty Reeves, ignored for years, finally heard. At 9 o'clock sharp, the district superintendent called. "Mr. Thornton, we've started a formal inquiry," she said. Sounded like she meant it too. "What we found so far, it's ugly. We're bringing in outside auditors." "Good," Caleb said. "And the leadership?" "Gerald Lockridge is gone. Resignation letter hit my desk this morning." Caleb thought about the man's fake smiles and expert excuses. All that spin couldn't survive the sunlight. "What about the rules?" Caleb asked. "Going public today," she said. "Mandatory culture training, monthly oversight with parents, real reporting channels, and we are reopening every closed case." Caleb walked into the school emergency meeting an hour later. The assistant principal was running the show now looked shell-shocked, but ready. The teacher's lounge was a mix of guilt and relief. They brought up special accommodations for Imani. Caleb cut them off. "No," he said. "My daughter doesn't need favors. Every kid here needs to be safe. Every kid needs to be heard. That isn't special treatment. That's basic human dignity." Heads nodded. Miss Whittam wiped a fresh tear and agreed. The updates kept rolling in all day. HR was digging up the files they tried to bury. The board rushed funding for the new programs. Parents were already building watch groups for the lunchroom and playground. When Caleb pulled up to the curb that afternoon, Imani hopped in. And for the first time in a long time, she was smiling. "Jenny actually asked to sit with me," she whispered. "Mrs. Cedar kept a close watch to make sure everyone played nice." "That is huge," Caleb said, checking the rearview mirror. "How are you feeling about it?" Imani paused, hands resting in her lap. "Like I can finally breathe," she admitted. The air didn't feel like lead anymore. That night they tackled dinner together, chopping veggies for a stew. Imani started humming a little tune while she worked something she hadn't done in months. A quiet peace filled the kitchen. "Dad," she said, lining up carrots in perfect rows. "Remember when you said doing the right thing is sometimes terrifying?" "I sure do. Last night was scary for everyone. But it was the good kind, like staring down a giant slide where your stomach flips, but you jump anyway." Caleb couldn't help but smile. The kid was wise beyond her years. "You nailed it, sweetie." After they ate, Imani tackled her homework without the usual hunch in her shoulders. She threw on her favorite star print pajamas and hopped into bed. "Read to me," she asked, burrowing under the blankets. Caleb grabbed her book. She was totally relaxed, breathing deep and steady. By page 3, she was out cold. He put the book down, studying her face in the nightlight's glow. She looked completely at peace, safe from tomorrow's worries. Her hand lay open on the pillow, finally unclenched after so many tense nights. Leaning against the doorframe, Caleb felt the gravity of it all. Real change wouldn't happen overnight. There would be pushback and hard talks ahead. But the foundation had shifted. The truth was out there, and you can't silence what's already been spoken. He thought about all the kids who would benefit. Not just Imani, but the silent ones who finally had a voice. Adults who would finally step up instead of turning a blind eye. Imani stirred, letting out a soft sigh in her sleep. Caleb watched her heart full. In the quiet moonlight of her room, he could feel real change finally taking root. 3 days after the forum, sunlight flooded Imani's room as she got ready for school. She moved differently this morning. There was a lightness to her step that hadn't been there before. She hummed while fixing her braids, not worrying if they stood out. "Ready for breakfast?" "Coming, Dad." Her voice was bright, making his chest swell with pride. The smell of French toast filled the house. At the table, she didn't just pick at her food. She actually talked. She rambled about a new science project and wondered if they could pick their own partners. The change was subtle, like a flower opening up in the sun. "You know," she said, cutting her French toast into neat squares, "Mrs. Martinez is stepping in as interim principal until they find a replacement." Caleb nodded. He liked the vice principal. "How do you feel about that?" "She came to our class yesterday to talk. She said we're all going to learn how to make the school better together." Imani paused with her fork halfway up. She looked right at me. Not like I was a problem, but like I was part of the solution. Caleb felt a lump in his throat. "You did help, sweetie. Your courage changed things." The drive to school felt different this time. The suffocating tension was gone, replaced by Imani humming along to the radio. At drop-off, she didn't clutch her backpack like a shield anymore. "Have a great day," Caleb said, watching her go. "You too, Dad," she waved, smiling for real. Later, Caleb swung by the school during lunch, but not to fight. He just wanted to witness the change. He found a spot near the cafeteria where he could watch unseen. The vibe was different. Teachers and aides were actually circulating among the tables now. He spotted Darlene Waitkim, who kept her job after her emotional testimony at the forum. She was engaged, stopping at tables to check in, a far cry from her old passive stance. Ruth Ann stood at their post, shoulders lighter. She'd always tried to help even when the system fought her. Now she moved with purpose. Her kindness wasn't a solo act anymore. It was part of the culture. When Imani walked in, Caleb held his breath out of habit. But then he saw something beautiful. "Imani!" A girl with curly red hair waved. "We saved you a seat." Caleb watched his daughter's face light up. She walked over to where 3 girls sat, including Sarah Chen, who had spoken out at the forum. The girls shifted their chairs, opening a spot clearly meant for her. Imani settled in and set down her tray. It was the lunch he'd packed, leftovers from their favorite Ethiopian spot. Without an ounce of shame, she folded her hands to say grace. Ruth Ann paused nearby, watching with a warm smile. She caught Caleb's eye and gave a knowing nod before moving on. "Is that Doro? My cousin loves that stuff," Sarah said, eyeing the stew. "Yeah." Imani's voice rang out clear. "My dad and I love it too. You guys want a bite?" That simple offer to share food that used to be a target for mockery caught in Caleb's throat. He watched Imani tear off a strip of injera bread, showing her friends how to pinch up the spicy stew. "Whoa, this is incredible," the redhead gasped. "Seriously, can you teach me how to make this?" Imani laughed, a pure, unfiltered sound that cut right through the cafeteria noise. "What?" "I'm still a rookie at cooking it, but my dad is a pro. Maybe you guys can come over and we can try not to burn the kitchen down." The girls bobbed their heads in agreement, and the chatter drifted naturally to other things. Math homework playlists, weekend vibes. Imani wasn't just present. She was leading the pack, her voice ringing out just as loud as anyone else's. From his corner, Caleb watched his daughter transform in real time. No more hiding, no more shrinking to make herself invisible. She was just being herself, the sharp, vibrant kid he'd raised her to be. When she cracked up at a friend's joke, the sound didn't have that hesitation he'd grown used to hearing. The chains were gone. This was what actual justice looked like. Caleb realized it wasn't about board meetings or policy memos. It was these small, golden moments where a kid felt safe enough to just exist. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Life would still throw punches. But the ground beneath her feet was solid again. The silence was dead, replaced by laughter that sounded like victory bells. Caleb slipped out the side exit carrying the image of her unforced smile like a trophy. That knot of dread he used to get walking into this school had unraveled, replaced by something steel-strong, joy, and the certainty that fighting for the truth, even when it's ugly, actually moves the needle. Hearing Imani giggle over a plate of stew was worth more than every corporate bonus he'd ever chased. It was the soundtrack of healing, a promise delivered to every kid who deserved to be seen, heard, and celebrated without having to apologize for who they were. Golden hour sun flooded the kitchen. Imani was at the table, pencil scratching across a notebook, her pink eraser untouched. She wrote with a new kind of confidence. Caleb noted the change, shoulders down, jaw unclenched, completely at peace, as she crushed her homework. 4. What's the assignment, kiddo? Caleb slid a plate of chocolate chip cookies and 2 glasses of milk onto the table. Imani glanced up, grinning. Miss Thompson wants an essay on what bravery and kindness actually mean. She grabbed a cookie. She said we could write it like a letter if that helped us get the words out. Caleb took the seat next to her, thankful for the teacher who stepped in to clean up the mess left behind. Sounds deep. Can I read it when you're done? Yeah, absolutely. Imani nodded and dove back into her work. Caleb watched her expression shift, frowning in thought, then softening as a memory hit her. The yellow ribbons in her braids swayed gently every time she leaned in to scribble a sentence. Her lips moved silently, shaping the words like she did during Sunday prayers. Finally, she dropped the pencil and smoothed out the page. Done, she whispered. Ready. Caleb took the sheet. The handwriting was impeccable, every loop and line deliberate. He started reading. Dear friend, I used to think bravery meant having zero fear. I thought kindness was smiling even when you wanted to cry. I was wrong. Sometimes bravery is speaking the truth even when your voice is trembling. Sometimes it's holding your ground when you want to bolt. And sometimes it's letting people stand next to you. My dad showed me that kindness isn't just being polite. Real kindness is seeing a mess and helping clean it up, even if it's not your mess, even when it's hard. I pray every night for strength and God answers, but he also sends backup. Like Ruth Ann, who saves me a seat and looks me in the eye. Like my new friends who ask to taste my food instead of making fun of it. And mostly like my dad who taught me that love looks like a fight for justice. I learned your heart has to be brave before your brain stops being scared. And that's okay. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing anyway. Now I pray over my lunch out loud. I'm done hiding. That's what kindness and bravery are, making the world safe enough for people to be real. Love, Imani. Caleb had to stop. The words blurred on the page. It was profound grown-up wisdom coming from a child. He looked at her, his eyes glassy. This is incredible, honey. Can I keep this? She nodded. I made a copy for class. That one is yours. Caleb stood moving toward his home office, sensing her trailing him. He unlocked his desk and pulled out the distressed leather portfolio reserved for birth certificates and deeds. He slid her essay inside like it was a winning lottery ticket. Why put it in there, Daddy? Caleb dropped to one knee. Because this is the most valuable thing I own now. It reminds me of a lesson I learned from you. What did I teach you? That being a leader isn't about being the loudest guy in the room. It's about listening to the people who are usually ignored. It's about doing the hard thing because it's the right thing. He tapped the leather folder. These words, they made me a better man, Imani. She threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. You were already good, Dad. You just needed to be brave too. Caleb held on, humbled by the grit and grace wrapped up in his little girl. That paper wasn't just homework. It was proof that truth spoken with love can move mountains, and that sometimes the biggest lessons come from the smallest teachers. They broke the hug, and Imani let out a massive yawn. Caleb checked the time. "All right, kiddo. Bedtime. Want to say prayers together?" "Yes, please," she whispered. She grabbed his hand, leading him past the desk where that letter sat, a permanent reminder that love turns fear into armor. The afternoon sun blazed through the windows of the Hope Community Center, throwing gold rectangles across the scuffed floorboards. Caleb Thornton stood back near the craft station. He watched Imani march up to a group of new kids, the beads in her braids clicking with every confident step. "Hey, I'm Imani," she announced, her voice strong. "Want to make friendship bracelets?" Two girls looked up. A boy with thick glasses put down his puzzle. Their eyes lit up. "Really? I've never done it," the boy said. Imani grinned. "It's easy. I'll teach you. My dad bought a ton of string." Caleb's chest tightened with pride as she pulled out chairs, explaining the knots like a pro. 6 months ago, she would have been hiding behind his leg, terrified to speak. Now her laugh was the loudest one in the room. Mrs. Martinez, the director, slid up next to him holding a stack of paper. "Your girl has a light," she said. "The other kids just flock to her. She's the one teaching me," Caleb admitted. He thought about her letter tucked away in his drawer at home. Those simple words changed the game. Bravery isn't standing alone. It's helping someone else find their feet. The center was buzzing. Seniors were sorting book donations. Teenagers were tutoring the little ones. A dad and his son were huddled under a wobbly table, fixing the leg with a screwdriver. No marble floors here. No mahogany desks. But something filled this room that his corporate office never had. Real connection. "I'll be honest," Mrs. Martinez said, organizing markers. "When you offered to sponsor us, I thought it was a PR stunt. Just another rich guy needing a photo op." Caleb nodded. He couldn't blame her. "I used to think a checkbook fixed the world," he said. "Thought money was the answer. But that's not why I'm here." "No," he said softly, watching Imani untangle a knot for a friend. "I'm here because my daughter taught me a lesson. You don't solve problems from a tower. You solve them by sitting at the table." A little girl with pigtails frowned at her bracelet. "I ruined it," she whined, lip quivering. Imani took the string gently. "It's okay. Sometimes you have to undo it to make it right. Let's start over." Caleb felt that one. His first instinct had been to throw cash at the school's bullying problem. Imani showed him the hard way. True leadership is listening to the little guy facing the ugly truth and being brave enough to hit restart. The light turned orange as the sun dipped low. Parents started trickling in. Imani packed up the string, meticulous as always. "Dad," she chirped. "Prayer circle before we go. Lead the way, sweetie." The remaining families gathered around as Imani bowed her head. No stutter, no looking over her shoulder. "Dear God," she prayed, "thanks for the new friends. Thanks for showing us that love beats fear and that everyone deserves kindness. Help us be brave for the people who need it. Thank you for showing us that big changes start small. Amen." "Amen," Caleb whispered. Standing there in the sunset, he felt it. The weight was gone. This wasn't the cheap satisfaction of closing a business deal. It was real, authentic, built on understanding. As they grabbed their coats, Imani gave Mrs. Martinez a squeeze. "See you Sunday," she yelled to her crew. They waved back, grinning. Walking to the car, Caleb realized something. The change didn't come from his bank account. It came from stepping into that lunchroom, from hearing his daughter's silence, from standing his ground when it got uncomfortable. Mostly it came from following Imani. She believed things could get better if people just stopped hiding. The air smelled like dry leaves. Imani squeezed his hand, looking up with clear, happy eyes. He saw it then. The healing that happens when you build bridges instead of walls. When you trade power for love. That was the real peace. Not the absence of a fight, but the presence of a purpose. They weren't hiding anymore. They were exactly where they belonged. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. I'll be back tomorrow with another story for the soul.